On January 20th, 2012, at UFC on FX1, an undefeated 23-year-old wrestler from the Republic of Dagestan made his UFC debut. Those in the know certainly saw him as a promising signing. At 16-0, he had to be doing something right, but Russia and the Caucasus area in particular were not yet the pipeline of talent to the West that we understand them to be today. Khabib Nurmagomedov dominated that night, choking out Kamal Shalarus in the third round of a wild but largely one-sided fight. In his second octagon appearance, 6 months later at UFC 148, Nurmagomedov faced Gleison Tibau, and after 3 hard-fought rounds in which he struggled to get Tibau to the ground and was himself taken down more than once, won a controversial unanimous decision. Boos reverberated through the arena as the scorecards were read, and the media of record overwhelmingly scored the fight for the Brazilian, but by hook or by crook, Nurmagomedov had passed his hardest test to date with his undefeated record intact. 8.5 years later, Tibau is still by far the sternest challenge Nurmagomedov has faced in the octagon. A case can be made that Nurmagomedov has not dropped a single round in his 10 fights since then. He is 28-0. He is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in Sherdog's rankings, number 2 in the UFC's own rankings, and number 6 according to Fight Matrix's algorithm. And on Saturday night in Abu Dhabi, Khabib Nurmagomedov will attempt to turn away the man many think is his most talented challenger yet, interim champion Justin Gaethje, and in the process become just the 4th man to defend the UFC lightweight belt 3 times. This is the Shillen and Duffy Show preview for UFC 254, Khabib versus Gaethje, and welcome. With me, as always, to break down the lightweight title headliner as well as the rest of the 12-fight card is my partner on the Shillen and Duffy Show, Mr. Keith Shillen. He is a contributor for Sherdog.com. He is the founder of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, and he is the producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing this evening?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic, dude. What an intro. Like, I don't know if Khabib got a better intro or I got a better intro. Like, that was fantastic. There's so many amazing things you pointed out. Like, the guy's 28-0, and we have 2 other fighters on this card who are technically undefeated. I mean, not technically, they are undefeated. He has more than double those guys in wins.
Mm-hmm.
You take Phil Hawes' opponent, Jacob Malkoun. He has 7 times as many wins as Jacob Malkoun. And instantly a guy who's undefeated gets a little more shine, a little more excitement. What Khabib's record, 28-0, is absolutely amazing. While you were saying this, the only thing that jumped in my head also was poor John Jones losing to Matt Hamill. You know?
Oh, absolutely. How differently would we be talking about Khabib right now if he had lost a unanimous decision to Tibau that night? Even though he'd be the same fighter.
Sure. Yeah. No, you're right. It's something about it. And if he actually can retire undefeated, which, you know, he's talked about retiring soon, if he could do it, it'd be absolutely incredible and one of the most amazing feats in all of MMA. And then we talk about Justin Gaethje. He's 22-2. I mean, He came into the UFC as that hot undefeated prospect, and he's only lost 2 fights, and both fights were, you know, fight of the year candidates. But I do have to correct you, Ben. I am not the founder of Loudmouth MMA. I'm the executive producer. Kyle Steele actually founded Loudmouth MMA, so I don't want to steal any shine. I steal everything else from Kyle, but I can't steal that from him. He is the founder.
My apologies to Mr. Steele. I will not get that wrong again. Thank you so much.
Plus, I want this show to be on the network, and if we don't give him that, it never makes it.
Understood. I have one just quick question for you. It's a yes or no question before we dive into this card from the bottom up. Without tipping your hand as to what your pick will be for the headline fight, is Justin Gaethje the best fighter that Khabib has faced in the UFC?
That's such. You said yes or no, so I should be real quick. It's such a tough test because there is definitely. I'll answer this. Strategically, he is.
Okay.
But I just want to say I have such high respect for the skill sets of Dustin Poirier, of Conor McGregor, guys like that. So that's why I was like tough on saying it. But I think it's one of those like grabbing all those 3 opponents. Who has the best chance of beating Khabib? Justin Gaethje. But I think Conor would do very well against Justin Gaethje, and you know that kind of styles make fights. But just a yes and no. Flip it. Do you think he's the best fighter that Khabib has ever faced?
I do. I think if you put in, say, the 8 best guys he's fought into like a little mini Grand Prix to fight him, Gaethje would probably have the best chance of emerging.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's very fair.
All right. With that blindside question out of the way that I just popped on my partner here, let's dig into this card with a lightweight preliminary fight between Joel Alvarez and Alexander Yakovlev. And let's just start with a quick reminder that this card starts at 7 p.m. local time in Abu Dhabi, which is an early card for those of us in the Western Hemisphere. You'll be talking about 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So set that alarm so that you don't miss these largely kind of loaded prelims. Joel Alvarez versus Alexander Yakovlev. Joel Alvarez, the 27-year-old Spaniard, is 17-2 in his mixed martial arts career. He is 2-1 in the UFC. He fought most recently at UFC Fight Night Figueiredo versus Benavidez 2 in July, where he guillotine choked Joseph Duffy into retirement into the first round of their fight. Yakovlev, the Russian, is 25-10 overall, 3-5 in the UFC, and he fought most recently last November at UFC Fight Night 163, Magomed Sharipov versus Kattar, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Roosevelt Roberts. Right now, they are fairly close on the odds. You can get Alvarez, the slight favorites, as good as about minus 150. If you like Yakovlev as the underdog, you can get as good as plus 140 on him. Keith, how do you see this fight playing out, and who you got?
So I think it's a very even fight. Yakovlev, when he first came in the UFC, he was someone that I think a lot of people got excited about. Is he's shown some flashes of greatness, but I think ultimately he's been, I don't want to say a bust, but pretty close to a bust. I mean, he's 35 years old now. He's got a 3-5 record in the UFC, so it's hard to really get excited about, his future. He looked really bad in his last fight against Roosevelt Roberts. I think was one of the worst performances of his career in a fight that he definitely could have won. He's southpaw. I think he's lost some hand speed over the years. He will target the body, which I like. Pretty good kicks. Defensively, I don't like that he backs straight up against the cage. He does look for some wrestling. He gets some trips from the clinch or some good drop step entries. He likes a scramble where he'll look for head attacks, Darce chokes, anacondas, that stuff. But he is really tall and skinny for the weight class, like to the point he's like looks very skinny and scrawny. And at 35 years old, I really think he should go back up to welterweight. I think that's affecting him as he slowed down in his fight against Roosevelt Roberts. Now you got Alvarez. He's kind of the opposite. He's 27 years old. He's also long and lengthy, but his body looks more filled out. Nice kicks. He stands up a little too straight for my liking. Back straight up to avoid punches, which will get him caught. Drops his hands a little bit. But on the ground is where he wants to get it. He's a legit submission threat. He's got 15 wins by way of submission out of 17. 4 by guillotine, which we saw our last fight against, you mentioned against Joe Duffy. I could definitely see an avenue for Yakovlev. In pre-tape study, I actually thought I was going to go with Yakovlev, but I actually am going to go with Alvarez. I'm just, as I rewatched the Roosevelt Roberts fight, I was just like, I'm done getting excited about Yakovlev. Alvarez is younger. He's 27. You assume he's at the age where he could still make improvements in striking, where Yakovlev is either hit the ceiling of his game or probably like starting going down. So I expect Yakovlev to probably take Alvarez to the ground and eventually get submitted when he gasses out. So I'll take Alvarez by 3rd round submission.
Outstanding. We're going to have some dissension right off the bat. You've already said a lot of what went into my thought process as I looked at this fight. And it sounds like it's a battle between two guys that neither of us is ready to go all in on yet. But I really just haven't seen much from Alvarez that makes me believe in him yet. He lost to Damir Ismagulov in his first UFC fight, but against Danilo Belluardo, he was not doing well in that fight until he swept him and then just punched his lights out on the ground. He really just won the 20 seconds of the fight that he won, but it was enough because that ended the fight. And then I think Joseph Duffy was just, it's unsurprising to me that he retired right afterwards. I just think we just saw like an unmotivated shell of Duffy there.
I agree.
Unlike me, I'm a motivated shell of Duffy. But Yakovlev has not had a great run in the UFC. Like, his loss to Roberts was really uninspiring looking. But I think I see Yakovlev understanding that he might well be fighting for his job. You know, he lost to Roberts, which makes it 3 of his last 4 he's lost. And I think he will be able to get takedowns if he wants them. And I guess I'm just betting on him to be savvy enough not to get swept and punched out or to blunder into a guillotine or something like that. So I'm going to take Yakovlev. I'm not super confident in it, but give me him by decision, probably winning 2 rounds out of 3.
I love that we disagreed right away.
Oh, yeah. Next up on the UFC 254 prelims, we move to the women's flyweight division, where Liana Jojua takes on Miranda Maverick. Jojua, the Georgian by way of Russia, is 8-3 in her career, 1-1 in the UFC. She lost her octagon debut to Sarah Morris last September at the blockbuster Khabib versus Poirier card, and then beat Diana Belbitsa by armbar at UFC on ESPN 13, Cater versus Ige, earlier this summer, back in July. Maverick will be making her UFC debut. The 23-year-old is 7-2 overall. She is coming to the UFC after a nice run in Invicta, including winning the Invicta Phoenix Series flyweight tournament last summer. Maverick is a pretty substantial favorite here. The best you can get her right now as of Wednesday night is about -280, whereas Jojua on the comeback can be found as high as +350 or +360. Do you agree with the odds makers on this one, Keith?
Well, I definitely will say this right away, that I don't think she should be a -350 favorite. I would say that line should be a lot closer. I'll start with the skill set of Jojua, because we've seen her in the UFC. 25 years old. You mentioned she's from the country of Georgia, but also trains in Russia or something like that. Both scenes, obviously Russia and MMA is just absolutely exploding here in the UFC in America. But Georgia is actually kind of really sneaking in, and a lot of fighters coming out of that region. So definitely an area that is really blossoming, which is good. As for her, she's not a really physically imposing athlete. Like, she's probably not that good of an athlete. I would say she's probably one-dimensional. On the feet, she's pretty raw. But she's 25 years old, so we could see some improvements in that. And she needs it because she's pretty kind of stiff on the feet. Weak takedown defense, but that actually plays well into her game because she doesn't mind going to the ground. She doesn't mind fighting off her back. As BJJ is kind of her thing. Very flexible. Can get subs anywhere, including off her back. Arm bars, as we started our last fight, is her specialty. That's what she's always looking for. Kind of like a poor man's Ronda Rousey, if you want to say. And the other thing I do like about her is that she's a former Fight Nights Global Champion and has gone 25 minutes. So going 15 minutes should not be an issue. Moving to Miranda Maverick, as you mentioned, the Phoenix Rising Champion. She's even younger, which is surprising for Jojua, who's 25. Miranda Maverick's only 23. And even though Jojua has a win in the UFC, Maverick has beaten the better competition. She got wins over Pearl Gonzalez, Deanna Bennett, Shayna Young, Victoria Leonardo twice. Like she's beaten good girls. This is like that's the run you want to make before you enter the UFC. So I don't think the bright lights will get to her too much. Southpaw uses a lot of movement. Excuse me. She likes to dart in and out of range with like a quick blitz. She used that little karate sidekick that you see like Holly Holm doing a lot. And she's the opposite of Jojua, where she's extremely physically strong. You see her, she's jacked. I saw pictures of her on Instagram, and she looks even more jacked. Like she looks like in the best shape of her life. The clinch is probably where she's gonna do very well. Clinch against the fence. She's got good wrestling, good entries. So she can either lock you up against the fence and outmuscle you, or just shoot on your hips, which she did well against Pearl Gonzalez. Good top control, though she will chase the submission that's not there. Good ground and pound. She does well, kind of like her best Khabib. Grab the Dagestanian handcuff, kind of hold you down, then blast you. Which good back takes. She is a submission there. Has force subs herself. Weak takedown defense though. I mean, Pro Gonzalez actually judo throwed her, and Pro Gonzalez is not known for her, big throws. I'm going to take Maverick. She is younger. I think she's a great addition to the UFC roster. I think she will overpower Jojua in the clinch and on the ground. And I think she'll get a late third round finish by ground and pound. However, as you mentioned, like a -350, I saw some betting lines had it like -440. Like she should not, I think it should be somewhere in like the, say, -180, -220 range. And that's simply because of her, she could, she'll scramble and lose position or just get taken down. And Jojua has that finishing ability. So I think Jojua, that's probably her only chance of winning, is getting the submission. But Maverick might give her those opportunities. So I'm not a betting guy, but like I would not touch a -350, -400 on Maverick.
I'm with you here. I think Jojua is better than she's looked in the UFC. Whereas I think Maverick is coming in with exactly the appropriate amount of hype and anticipation. Jojua did not look good in her UFC debut, but she was taking on Sarah Morris at bantamweight, so already a weight class up from where she really wants to fight. And Morris missed weight by like 3 pounds. So, I mean, she looked a weight class and a half bigger than Jojua because she basically was. Jojua is going to have a strength deficiency, I think, against most of the top flyweights in the UFC, but it probably won't be quite as extreme as that first fight made it look. The Belbitsa fight, I think, is a better indication of what we're going to get from Liana Jojua. Maverick is a bull. Really, she is. She doesn't have quite the same fast twitch explosion that Jessica Andrade does, but she's got that same thing where she'll probably be the shorter fighter in almost all of her fights. But she's going to have the power to make things work that probably wouldn't if she were not as physically powerful as she is. I expect this fight to be a lot of Maverick taking Jojua down and probably trying to advance position and exert some ground and pound on her while avoiding submissions from the bottom. That is a recipe for Jojua to lose rounds, and I expect her to lose rounds. In fact, I expect her to lose all 3. So while I think the line is a little bit out of whack, I do favor Maverick in this one to come away with a pretty clear-cut decision. The UFC 254 prelims move over to the men's bantamweight division, where we have champions from 2 of the UFC's premier feeder organizations meeting in the octagon. We have Casey Kenney versus Nathaniel Wood. Kenney, the 29-year-old, is 15-2 with 1 draw in his career, 4-1 in the UFC. He is a former 2-division champ from Legacy Fighting Alliance, both at flyweight and at bantamweight, as well as being the former Tachi Palace Fights flyweight champ. And he came to the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series. He fought it will be 3 weeks ago, defeating Haile Alateng in a frontrunner for beatdown of the year at the UFC on ESPN Home versus Aldana card. Across the octagon from him will be Nathaniel the Prospect Wood. He is also 4-1 in the UFC, 17-4 in his career, and he is the former Cage Warriors bantamweight champion. He fought most recently in July, taking a unanimous decision over John Castaneda. Before that, he was knocked out in the opening seconds of the 3rd round of his fight with John Dodson in a fight that otherwise had been going well for him. Before that, he had wins by submission over Jose Alberto Quinones, Andre Ewell, and Johnny Eduardo. The line is fairly close here, but Kenney is a favorite. You can get Kenney around -170 right now, Wood around +155 or 160. Who do you have in this matchup of bantamweight prospects, Keith?
So this is a fantastic matchup, and I know we talked about Casey Kenney last week, or not last week, a couple weeks ago. We were both very excited about his performance. I don't remember how you feel about Nathaniel Wood, but I'm assuming you're probably like me. You probably like his talent too. the thing that jumps out to me is like, why is this on the prelims? You know, when you have 6 fights on the main card, like to me, this one should clearly be on the main card. Other than the main event, this might be the fight I'm most excited about. I'll start with Nathaniel Wood. You mentioned he's only 27 years old. Uh, he's very poised, very comfortable and relaxed when he's on his feet, and you get that from having 21 fight, pro experience. He's an orthodox fighter, has a long jab. He'll lead with his power right hand a lot, which surprises a lot of people because a lot of people don't expect that. Does a lot of shoulder rolling, push and teep kicks down the middle, mixes his punches and kicks in together very well, so you kind of don't know where he's going with it. Gets to the clinch, good trips, solid entry, especially for a European fighter, or I should say Western European fighter who's not really known for wrestling. He's got good wrestling. He's a submission threat. He's a good prospect. You move over to Casey Kenney, 29 years old, a little bit older, but what I love about this guy is when it comes to his striking, he can either lead the dance or counter. He's comfortable either way. Southpaw feints very well. Everyone kept talking about his kicks last fight, and that kind of overshadowed like how improved his hands are. Feints very well, fast hands, really good slip and rip left hand. Like he was hitting Alatang Haley over and over with a slip and rip left hand. Checked every time Haley kind of tried to get rushed to the pocket, check right hook, and then as we talked about a couple weeks ago, just kicks to all areas of the body. I mean, he looked like freaking Mirko Krokop. I know I said that like 3 weeks ago. He looked sensational. Just was blasting it. Constant pressure, like didn't slow down. Like even though he was just working over Alatang Haley, he didn't stop. Very good wrestler. We saw that like in the scrambles with Ray Borg, even with what's his name? I can't think of his name right now. The guy who beats everyone with his wrestling.
Marab.
Yeah, Marab. Yeah. Craig Allen would kill me. Miraj Devashvili. Even though he was taken down, he made him work. I love this matchup. That said, I'm gonna go with Kenney, and I'm feeling pretty confident in Kenney wins. It's a southpaw versus orthodox. So their best strikes should line up well. So Wood's right hand should be in line to land on Kenney, but also to flip that, all Kenney's kicks are going to be lined up perfectly on the orthodox fighter. I'm so high on Kenney. I know the quick turnaround is going to be tough, especially if he flew home, being that, it's a 16-hour flight. You have to go all the way home, do it again, quarantine again, do all that. But he looks so good his last fight. I can't pick against him. So I'm going to take Kenney. I'm going to take it by unanimous decision.
I'm 100% with you on this one. We've had the talk more than once on our weekly show about recency bias and being all hyped up about the most recent thing in our memory. You tend to claim that, you fall victim to that more easily than I do, but I can't get that picture out of my mind of him just nailing Alatang Haley with kicks to the legs, the body, and then going upstairs, later. I like both these guys as prospects. I think they both have sticking power in the UFC. I don't think either of these guys is someone we're going to be talking about having washed out of the UFC on 3 straight losses a year from now. But for Wood to win, I would have to see some things that I haven't seen before happen to Casey Kenney, and I just don't see it. I think Kenny's going to be the sharper striker. I think he's going to be able to keep Wood at distance. Wood will want to punch, and Kenny's going to be able to tag him up with kicks. And yeah, give me Kenney via a very obvious, if perhaps even lopsided decision.
And I love that we both kept saying prospect. We never mentioned Nathaniel Wood's called the prospect.
How long are you allowed to keep that?
I mean,
that nickname.
Fights.
That's kind of like, when you call yourself the young assassin and all of a sudden, you're 36 and,
yeah.
I mean, the prospect.
Josh Barnett, he did get rid of the babyface assassin.
When he
hit like 40, he had to get rid of it.
When he hit 40, and by the time he had like the Viking beard going on, and
and saggy tits.
Okay, so Josh, you can find Keith Schillen in Just go to Rhode Island. It's not, it's not a big place. You'll be able to find them pretty quick. And
just ask Whiskey. Someone point me out.
The prelims power on with a light heavyweight matchup between Un Jung and Smilin' Sam Alvey. Jung, the 32-year-old from South Korea, is 13-2 in his MMA career, 2-0 in the UFC since debuting last August. He guillotine choked Kadis Ibragimov last August, and then in December punched out Mike Slow Rodriguez in just a minute at the Frankie Edgar versus Korean Zombie card. Sam Alvey is 33-14 with 1 no contest. He's 10-9 in the UFC, a number that looks a little worse than it once was by the fact that he is currently mired in a 4-fight losing streak. He is a veteran of the 16th season of The Ultimate Fighter, though he didn't actually sign with the UFC right out of the season, but instead went back and won a couple more fights on the regional scene. But nonetheless, he will step into the octagon for the 20th time in Abu Dhabi on Saturday. Jung is a comfortable favorite, as one might expect, of two fighters on the current trajectories that Jung and Alvey are. Jung is available around minus 330 or minus 340, whereas Alvey is a comfortable plus 300 underdog. Is there any value on that underdog pick, Keith Schillen?
No, you're not. Alvey. The guy's 34 years old. He seems like he should be like 104 years old in fight years. I'm not going to get excited for a guy in a 4-fight losing streak that whose chin's fading, who's never very good athlete. He's always been slow. He got even slower. He's got an insanely low output. I mean, we know what's going to happen. He's just going to kind of stare at Jung with like a weird scowl on his face and then just kind of circle away from him until Jung finishes him. He's such a nice guy, so I don't want to talk too negative about him. So I'll do some positive things about him. When he does attack, he'll throw a hook, and he does have decent pop. It's not earth-shattering as the commentating team is going to make it sound like. They're going to make it sound like if Sam Alvey even grazes you, like Francis Ngannou, like you're going to be unconscious, which is not going to happen. His kicks, when he throws them at one every 4 minutes, it's pretty good. I mean, they bothered Ryan Spann a little bit. But like we said, his chin is faded. He's still pretty good in the clinch. If someone tries to go for takedown, he's hard to take down. He'll look, he can land some, short strikes. He'll look for a 10-figure guillotine. But there's not much else to his game. Jung is 27 years old. He's pretty well-rounded, pretty fast. Throws, as we saw with the Rodriguez fight, he throws punches straight down the pipe. Can strike from both the orthodox and southpaw stance. Good power. And he's at the age where he's probably just starting to come into his power. And it's funny because the commentary team will probably talk about Sam Alvey's power, but if I had to guess, I think Jung would probably hit harder at this point in their career. Decent takedowns, though I don't think he'll get a takedown against Sam Alvey. But if he does, he's got some pretty good ground and pound. I'm not picking Sam Alvey any time in his run left in the UFC. Jung is just younger, faster, hits harder. I think he catches Alvey, and I don't trust Alvey's chin anymore. I think Jung puts him out, and I'm going to say puts him out in the first round.
Jung is he's not the wild man that your stereotypical Korean fighter, of say 5 to 10 years ago was, but he's a very aggressive guy. And like you said, he throws straight down the pipe. He throws hard, and just this is not a version of Alvey that's going to have much for him. Even at 180, like at 185. Alvey was definitely kind of slow of hand and foot, even in his prime. He's still slow for a light heavyweight, but his pop is not carried over. I think a lot of the narrative of Alvey having one-shot knockout power is an artifact of his days at middleweight. But I'm with you. I do think Alvey is a super tough guy. I mean, he's on a 4-fight losing streak, but a couple of those fights were close. And all of them were against pretty good fighters. He's a step up for Jung from Kadis Ibragimov and Mike Rodriguez. I do like Alvey to at least, make it to the second round. I'm going to say Jung by knockout in the second round. and it looks like we're both picking him to run Alvey's losing streak to 5 in the UFC. While it's possible to survive that, it's still pretty rare. So we'll see what the future holds for Smilin' Sam. The UFC 254 prelims roll on as one of the more experienced fighters in the UFC welcomes a brand new newcomer to the octagon. It is Alex Cowboy Oliveira versus Shavkat Rakhmanov at welterweight. Oliveira, the Brazilian, is 22-8-1 with 2 no contests in his career. He's 11-6 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He is 32 years old. He is on a 2-fight winning streak over Peter Sabata and Max Griffin that makes up his entire fight calendar for 2020 so far. Prior to that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak, losing to Nicholas Dalby, Mike Perry, and Gunnar Nelson. Rakhmanov, the 25-year-old from Kazakhstan, is a perfect 12-0 in his career, bouncing back and forth between M1 Challenge and the Kazakhstan MMA Federation, the primary promotion in his home country. Odds are very close on this one. You can get Rakhmanov at even money, plus 100. Oliveira, if you like him in this one, you can get him as good as minus 112. Keith Schillen, how do you feel about this fight? How does it play out, and who wins?
Well, I'm glad that the odds are very close because it is a fight that I really liked and that I was a little torn on because both guys are good. I mean, as we just talked about Sam Alvey, I said that he appears a lot older than he is. Same thing with Alex Oliveira. Alex Oliveira is 32 just because he's been in the UFC, been in so many wars. He seems like he should be older. But he's actually at the age where he probably should be in his prime. He's usually a very, very aggressive fighter, but we saw a completely different guy in his last fight against Peter Sabata. He was very controlled. He's always hit really hard. He's definitely a bit unorthodox in his striking, throws from weird angles. He has those long arms and long legs that really gives people fits. Works behind a long jab, keeps his hands low, loops his punches. They kind of come at you from unexpected. He's always been a good athlete. He's elusive, uses a lot of movement. He'll throw in a spinning attack or flying knee. He'll throw a step in elbow, some teep kicks, body kicks. I mean, he's kind of fun. And he has been he's willing to throw down in a brawl, which might not always be the best fight IQ for him or the best avenue of success because he is a good outside striker. But he's also good all the way out or all the way in because he's strong in the clinch because he's so physically strong. Good takedowns, good ground and pound. It's hard to take down himself. He has in the past he has gassed out because of the amount of clinch wrestling he'll do and that. But we haven't seen that in this last little stretch. Move over to Rakhmanov. I like this kid. He looks really good. He looks like a good addition to the UFC. As we mentioned, he's one of the undefeated fighters coming in this card, making his debut. M1 Global Champion, which is a good organization to come in as a champion. He's the first fighter from Kazakhstan. That's what I read. I don't know if that's true, but I'm assuming it is. When I was doing tape study on him, there is a pro boxer with almost the exactly same name, spelled like one letter off. So I had to keep circling through this pro boxer that I don't know who he is. He's pretty well rounded. I'm talking about Rakhmanov, not the pro boxer. He stays very calm and relaxed in his striking, which shows good experience. Keeps his arms loose. He's not tensing up. Nice crisp snap on his punches. Works behind a jab. Throws combinations. He'll attack the body. Defensively, he's got a little bit of flaws. He pulls his head straight back, which I've talked at length. I hate. But clinch takedowns, solid top control. He's a submission threat. He's got 4 submission wins. So he's well-rounded, and he's at the age that we talk about all the time, 25 years old. He's at the age where he could make leaps and bounds of improvements. And if that is the case, he's going to be Alex Oliveira. I just don't know if I can trust that. I really wanted to pick Rakhmanov, and even as I say this, I still don't feel good about this. But I'm actually going to go with Oliveira because that is such a tough test for anybody, especially in UFC debut. I think Oliveira is going to be able to control some of the attacks that he has. I'm sorry. I think he's going to control the clinch. I also think he's going to stay controlled like he did against Sabata. I think he can use those outside kicks and the jab, and then also win the clinch. So I'm going to take Oliveira by unanimous decision, but I think this is going to be a very close fight. I'm looking forward to this one.
I'm looking forward to this one as well. I'm excited that Rakhmanov is coming over. I think Oliveira is going to be a serious step up from what he's used to facing. The thing about Rakhmanov is, for a guy that's 12-0 with 12 finishes, he actually spends a lot of time losing his fights before he wins them. Like just pretty much everybody that's faced him has been able to do what they want. Like guys who have wanted to take him down have been able to take him down. Guys that want to punch and kick him have been able to punch and kick him. Just he comes back with something bigger and better and puts them away. Alex Oliveira is not an easy guy to put away. He was on that 3-fight losing streak, but they were all good fighters and they were all close fights. They were all good fights. I mean, the loss to Nelson, he got choked out, but he got choked out because Nelson split him open with just one of the nastiest elbows ever, and just it was a bloodbath instantly. And I think everything started rolling downhill from there. And then since that 3-fight losing streak, Oliveira, like you mentioned, has really changed his approach. I mean, he hasn't become conservative. He's become conservative by his own standards, maybe.
Yeah.
But
yeah, good point.
I mean, he's still an aggressive guy, but not quite the wild man he used to be, which just makes me think he's going to be able to outlast Rakhmanov and not just win a decision. I think he's gonna find something late. I think Rakhmanov will fade late, and Oliveira will be able to knock him out or submit him in the third.
Yeah, and let's not forget that his last loss against Nicholas Dalby was a fight that a lot of people thought he won, and there was also some controversy in that fight with the late stand-up and all this stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was the reaction to that 3-fight losing streak that made him look as different as he has against Griffin and Sabata. I mean, you wouldn't think that a guy who has like 8 kids by 8 different moms in his hometown and got blown up with a grenade on Christmas Eve a couple of years ago would be capable of making like just a smart life decision and strategic choice for himself, but he's clearly done so. And I like it to make the difference here for him. Nonetheless, I think Rakhmanov has staying power. I don't think he's going to be like a 2-and-done type guy. I think he's UFC material.
You know, when you have your 8th child, that really makes you change your ways. You know, like, I don't know about you when you've had a child, but I've had my 8th kid. It really gives me a better perspective on life, and I just want to be better at things, you know?
The preliminary card at UFC 254 wraps up with a heavyweight matchup between Stefan Struve and Tai Tuivasa. It will certainly be one of the more optically interesting matchups in UFC history. It's questionable in some of the other optics as well, as it matches up 2 fighters who are on a 3-fight losing streak and have lost 4 of their last 5 respectively. But nonetheless, they meet in the octagon. Stefan Struve is 13-10 in the octagon, 29-12 in his career overall. He is a 41-fight veteran in spite of being just 32 years old. He has lost 4 of 5, with the only win in there being over Marcos Rogerio de Lima, and he has lost to Ben Rothwell, Marcin Tybura, Andrei Arlovsky, and Alexander Volkov. Tuivasa, the 27-year-old native of Sydney, Australia, is 9-3 in his career, and his 6-fight UFC career has been like an inning of baseball, 3 up, followed by 3 down. He won his first 3 in the octagon, but since then he has lost to Junior Dos Santos, Blagoy Ivanov, and Sergey Spivak. Most recently, losing to Spivak via arm triangle choke, going all the way out, in fact, at the Whittaker versus Adesanya card last October. This one is pretty close to a pick'em on a card with actually several fights that are close to a pick'em. Right now, Tuivasa is available at even money, and Struve very close to it, as low as -107. Keith, who do you have in this very possibly loser leaves town heavyweight matchup?
So I absolutely hate this matchup. I don't want to pick either guy because I know whichever guy I'm going to pick, the other guy's going to win, and I'm going to kick myself for, like, why did I trust Stefan Struve, or why did I trust Tai Tuivasa? In fairness to Struve, he's trying to improve. At least it looks that way. In his last fight against Ben Rothwell, he was trying to keep his distance, which is something for a guy who's 7 feet tall has never done. He was using leg kicks. He was using teep kicks. When Rothwell was trying to press forward, he'd do a step-in knee. But he still had the other issues, which he's always had. He kept his chin straight up in the air. He pulled his head straight back. He backed himself up towards the cage. There was some controversy with the groin strikes and in that, but regardless of that, when Ben Rothwell put up the pressure, Stefan Struve's chin folded, which has been an issue for a long time. And another reason why he folded is because Stefan Struve backed up straight to the cage, which he's done in the past. He's a extremely weak wrestler. I'm assuming he can still get submissions off his back, though it's been a very, very long. I don't remember the last time he got submission off his back, but it's been a very long time. But then you got Tai Tuivasa. He's 20, so you definitely like that more than Stefan Struve. Still got pretty good hand speed, decent power, but he's a god awful wrestler. Sergey Stevia headlocked him like 2 or 3 times. Like only women go for headlocks, and it's like you should like women MMA goes for the headlock and like youth wrestling, because if you're still wrestling it like even on like a high school level and you get headlocked, you suck. Like just you're not good. And he has a terrible get-up game. So as a prediction, I think I'm stalling because I don't want to pick anybody. So pre-tape study, I was going with Stefan Struve. I always like to write down pre-tape study to see if tape studies change my mind. So I wrote down Stefan Struve first. When a fight gets announced, this is the person I think I'm going to take. Then I watched film study on Stefan Struve, and I was like, no, I'm taking Tai Tuivasa. Then I watched film study on Tai Tuivasa, and I'm like, no, I got to take Stefan Struve. And now I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to take either one of these guys. I guess I'll take Stefan Struve. I mean, the size still jumps out to me. And he appears to want to be trying to get better. And Tai Tuivasa, he has the youth, he has the power advantage. So I could now, just talking about it now, I expect him to knock out Struve. But I guess maybe Struve could still get a takedown on Tuivasa, maybe get a submission. We've seen him get takedowns and submissions like 150 years ago. So maybe it's still there. And if it is, Tuivasa's the guy to do it to. So I will take Struve by submission, which means Tuivasa is definitely going to win.
Well, I hope you're right in being wrong, because I actually have Tuivasa in this one. I don't know whether Struve will have the wherewithal to try to bring it to the ground, and I don't know if he will do it soon enough or be successful enough when he tries. I think he's going to be on the gunnery range until Tuivasa catches him with something. I could see it stretching out into the second round, but I'm just going to go big rather than go home and say Tuivasa by first round knockout.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, even though I made the pick, I already feel like I'm wrong.
Well, check in with us on Sunday, and you'll hear us talk all about it on the recap show. We now move over to the main card pay-per-view section of UFC 254, and we start off with 2 men finishing some unfinished business in the light heavyweight division. That would be Magomed Ankalaev and Yon Cutelaba. Ankalaev, the 28-year-old Dagestani, is 13-1 in his career, 4-1 in the UFC. After losing his debut to Paul Craig via one of the great Hail Mary submissions in UFC history, he's gone on a tear, putting away Martin Prachnio, Klidson Abreu, Dalcha Lungiambula, and Cutelaba most recently in February, although there was quite a bit of controversy about that, which we'll get to in a moment. Cutelaba, the man from Moldova, is 15-5 with 1 no contest. He is 4-4 in the UFC. He's beaten Khalil Roundtree, Gaji Murata Antigulov, Enrique da Silva, and Jonathan Wilson. He has lost to Misha Serkinov, Jared Cannonier, Glover Teixeira, and most recently Ankalaev. That fight in February at UFC Fight Night Benavidez versus Figueiredo 1 ended in 38 seconds when Ankalaev nailed Cutelaba with a couple of kicks to the head. Cutelaba went staggering away. Referee Kevin McDonald stopped the fight, and Cutelaba immediately insisted that he had been playing possum. It stays on the books as a TKO win for the Russian, but nonetheless, we are running it back 8 months later. Enough of the odds makers think that Cutelaba was not play acting, that he is available around plus 265 as the underdog, whereas Ankalaev, if you believe in him to take out the other man for real this time, you're going to have to find him around minus 300. Keith, how does the rematch of one of the weirder fights in recent memory go?
So I want to talk about the stoppage. I think it was a terrible stoppage. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't the worst I've seen, but the guy was on his feet, still throwing. I didn't like the stoppage. That said, like, I don't think I needed a rematch. I don't know if anybody needed a rematch, and it's been rebooked like 12 times. I feel like I've predicted the winner of this fight 50 times, and I just hope this fight finally happens so we can just move on. Ankalaev, I'll start with him because he won the first fight. He's well-rounded, very big for the weight class. Technically sound striker, southpaw, works behind a jab. Beautiful leg kicks, beautiful push kicks. The high kick just was not missing Cutelaba's chin in the first fight. Defensively, and I feel like I keep saying this the whole card, he does keep his chin kind of high. And Cutelaba definitely has the power to make him regret that. If he gets to the clinch, he's very strong. He likes to just push his opponent to the fence and then just kind of drop down on the hips and pull the base out on him. Typical Russian smothering top game. He does a lot of head control, pushing his head against his opponent's head to kind of keep him down. Will grab a limb. Good ground and pound, and it's hard to take down. Go over to Cutelaba is a very different kind of fighter. He's explosive. I mean, when you talk about Cutelaba, that's the first thing that jumps out to you. He hits extremely hard. He throws everything hard. If he connects, he's going to put you down. If he doesn't connect, he's probably going to gas himself out and then get finished. He has that Greco-Roman background, but you don't see it often. And when you do see it, his wrestling is not elite or anything like that. I think his wrestling kind of gets exaggerated. If he does get on top, he does have some really vicious ground and pound until he gasses out. I don't see what's going to be different than just that little spurt we saw in the last fight. Like, I think the jab and the high kick will be there for Ankalaev. I think he puts him out early. And if he doesn't put him out early, I think he dominates the rest of the fight no matter what and puts him out late. Like, I think Ankalaev, I don't know what Ankalaev by stoppage is, but I would, if it's got a pretty good line, anything under like 150, negative 150, I'd probably bet that. So yeah, I like Ankalaev and I like him pretty easily.
Yeah, that's going to be unanimous on this one. Speaking just briefly to the stoppage in the first fight, I agree that it was a premature stoppage, but at the same time, Cutelaba had kind of acted like a jackass all week, just getting into his face at the weigh-ins, literally charging across the octagon and like touching him and putting his hands on him before the fight started. If your strategy is to convince people that you're hurt worse than you are, you can't be too mad when it works. is I guess all I can say.
That's a good point.
Oh, you were playing possum. You wanted everyone to think you were really badly hurt. Well, congratulations, it worked. I think Ankalaev has actually gotten a bit of a raw deal on his UFC run so far, partly through his own fault and partly not. The Craig fight, hey, don't take anything away from Craig. That's one of the greatest comebacks in UFC history. It was sensational. I was jumping up and down. Yeah. But at the same time, he was walking through Craig until that happened. And then this Cutelaba thing, if Ankalaev had beaten Cutelaba uncontroversially, he'd be fighting a top 10 fighter right now. Light heavyweight is it's aging, and so many of the guys in the top 10 or 15 have already fought each other. It's desperate for new blood, and Ankalaev is that guy. So I think it's going to be kind of the same thing and here I'm going to betray my old school a little bit, where you look back and it's like, oh man, it's so weird that Frank Mir had to fight Wes Sims twice. There are two guys, one guy that was headed off to become, one of the greatest heavyweights of his generation and arguably one of the 10 greatest heavyweights of all time. And another guy that professionally was just headed in basically the opposite direction. But they ended up having to fight twice because the first fight ended so weirdly.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is going to look like a bump in the road of Ankalaev's career a year or two from now. I believe in Ankalaev as at least a future title challenger, if not title winner, just because I have no idea who'll be holding the belt at that time. But Cutelaba's not a bad fighter. I mean, you look at his record, he's 4-4, and basically he's lost to the good fighters and beaten the not as good ones. He's lost to Serkinov, Cannonier, Teixeira, and Ankalaev. Those are all very good fighters.
Yeah.
I just think Ankalaev's going to destroy him. I have the feeling that Ankalaev is smart enough that he won't hang out on the feet where Cutelaba really has the best, his best chance of victory, because he does have fantastic power and he's able to put it on people just because he's so quick and so explosive. And he probably won't hang around and give Cutelaba a chance to get it to the ground on his terms. I think Ankalaev is going to take him down and just pound the snot out of him. Give me Ankalaev by first round TKO, ground and pound this time.
Yeah, I want to jump in. I know we got to move on because we have other fights to talk about, but you made some good points. I'm also extremely high in Ankalaev. I'm looking right now at our SureDog top 10 rankings, and just to make a point, like right now we have, say, Volkan Oezdemir at number 9. Like I think I'd take Ankalaev to beat Oezdemir right now. To be extremely, controversial or hot take, like Jan Blachowicz is the light heavyweight champion of the world. Like, I would be shocked if Ankalaev fought him tomorrow and won.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody in the top 10 that I look at and go, oh, that guy would kill Ankalaev. Sure. I do think he needs some more seasoning, so that maybe that'll be one good thing about this kind of weird duo of fights with Cutelaba, is that maybe it'll be good that he wasn't thrust into the title picture so quickly.
Yeah.
But I think in a year from now, he's going to be there.
Yeah, and I think you're right when you talk about like Paul Craig, like don't take anything away from him, and one of the most memorable moments in MMA UFC history. But I also agree that when we look at Ankalaev's record at the end of his career, it's like, wow, he lost to Paul Craig. It's gonna feel like when you look at Matt Hughes, be like, oh, he lost to Dennis Hallman twice
in like 30 seconds each time. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have like a similar feel.
Next up on the UFC 254 main card, it is flyweight women again, as Lauren Murphy welcomes Liliya Shakirova to the octagon. Murphy, the 37-year-old from Anchorage, Alaska, is 13-4 in her mixed martial arts career, 5-4 in the UFC, where she arrived after a 3-fight win streak in Invicta. She has fought twice this year, beating Roxanne Modafferi at UFC on ESPN Blades versus Volkov in June. Before that, she beat Andrea Lee at UFC 247 Jones versus Reyes, right down here in Houston. She beat Romero Barella before that, and that is her current 3-fight win streak. She will be welcoming Shakirova, a freestyle wrestling world champion from Uzbekistan, who is 28 years old. She is 8-1 in her mixed martial arts career, and as said before, will be making her UFC debut. Murphy is a comfortable favorite. The best you can find her out there right now is around -225, where the Octagon newcomer is a 2-1 underdog, available at +200. Keith Schillen, who have you got in this one?
Well, I want to talk about Lauren Murphy for a second. I just want to give this girl credit. Like, if you count her time on the Ultimate Fighter show, a show that not many people were excited her coming off the show, and her being 37 years old, like there was one time counting the Ultimate Fighter losses, she was 2-5 in the UFC before the 3-fight win streak. I don't think anybody was saying Lauren Murphy at 37 years old would be on a 3-fight winning streak, and like 1-2 wins away from a title shot. I mean, this originally supposed to be Cynthia Calvillo. That was a title eliminator fight. Like, she wins that fight, she's probably getting a title shot. Go back when they booked the Jennifer Maia fight against Valentina Shevchenko. Like, they could have booked Lauren Murphy. Like, there wouldn't have been a big argument for Jennifer Maia deserving that. Like, that's like, and nobody was expecting Lauren Murphy to have this success. But it, she's she's beat some good girls, and she's improved a lot her skill set. She's not a great athlete, but she's very physically strong. She fights at a high output. She's got pretty clean boxing, uses lots of jabs. She's been sitting on her punches to generate power. We've seen her hurt Roxanne Modafferi. She, similar to Nathaniel Wood, she likes to lead with her right power shot, which surprised a lot of people. I don't know if she gets credit for her toughness. Like, she's going to be bloody in every fight. She takes a beat and just keeps moving. She takes a beat because she lacks head movement, but she's just so tough. She just continues to press the action. I shouldn't say she lacks head movement, because in her last fight against Roxanne Modafferi, she actually showed some head movement. The fight against Andrea Lee, it was like, I don't know if she knew it was like even allowed to try to avoid a punch. But in the last fight, she actually did some head movement. She had a lot of pull right hand, pull left hook. She did well with that. She likes that boxing range, not the kicking range, because she doesn't check kicks. If she throws her offensive kick herself, it's slow, it's ugly. Just not kicking is just not bode well for her. But she also does very well, like, all the way in. She's got a good clinch, sneaky entry on our opponent's hips. Not a big submission threat, not a big ground and pound girl, but she'll sneak in a takedown to win a round. And she's pretty hard to take down herself. Now, Liliya Shakirova, I watched some film on her. Uzbekistan fighter. You mentioned, like, world champion, and I don't know if it was world champion. She's very highly ranked in wrestling. She uses a lot of movement. She does a lot of up and down feints, which happens a lot when you're a wrestler, because you're faking the shot, you're faking overhands. Does well to bounce her head off the center line. Does well to hide behind posts. Like, she's got some good defensive skills. She loves her overhand right. She got a little bit of Dan Henderson in her, where she kind of, or Josh Koscheck, where they kind of like, it's that new toy that it's sometimes, like, the worst thing that happens to a wrestler is they start, like, landing power shots, and then it's like you kind of, like, you don't want to play with the old toy the rest of you've been doing in your life. You want to go with the Dan Henderson. Famously, it happened to him. I met him losing to, like, Kazuya Misaki because he was just looking for a right hand that wasn't there. Josh Koscheck, same thing. There's so many other wrestlers we could talk. Tyra Woodley was the guy who kind of fell into love with it. And I hope that's not happening with her. But she throws some kicks. She likes some spinning attacks. She'll throw a spinning back fist, spinning back kick. The other thing I really disturbs me about her, she's a low output. Like, she's constantly looking for the perfect shot. But if she mixes in her wrestling, she's a real threat to Lauren Murphy. Her takedowns are nice. They're fast. She's extremely strong. She picks her opponents up with ease. And when she gets on the ground, she has crushing ground and pound. I really want to take Shakirova in an upset. She has that advantage in wrestling. Murphy's experience, her output, just this momentum. I almost feel guilty picking against her. Like, it's such a nice story. I mean, you talk about, you go back to her, she's very open about the personal demons she had before she came to MMA. I love the story about the woman who brought her kid to jiu-jitsu class, and next minute, years later, she's fighting in the UFC. I just want Lauren Murphy to be good. Like I don't know why. Like, because, like, is there a Lauren Murphy fan out there? Like, no. Like, I might be it. But this one, it's one of these ones where, do I want to be a hipster and take, like, the new girl? Am I getting tricked by, the wrestling? I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna take Lauren Murphy, but if you're a betting man, I don't hate Shakirova, especially if she has higher output than she has. Like, if she turns up her output, and I would probably take her. But the fact that she's always looking for like one punch, and Lauren Murphy seems indestructible, you can't hurt her. I don't know if that's gonna work, but there is an avenue for Shakirova. So yeah, I'm not too confident in this pick.
And you have Murphy by decision then?
Murphy by decision, yeah. I always take the cop out and take the women by decision.
Hey, play the numbers. I'm gonna be even more of a square than you, because I have Murphy in this one, and I actually have her a little more decisively. There's always a question of what kind of quality of tape you're getting when you're watching someone who's fought exclusively in China and Russia. But I think Murphy is going to be a whole different animal physically than the women that Shakirova has been throwing around. Obviously, I've seen all of Murphy's fights going back at least through Tough and Invicta, but I've also been in a room with her fairly recently. I was in Houston for the Andrea Lee fight, and even though I actually thought Andrea Lee won that fight, I was stunned at just how big and how muscular Lauren Murphy is. I think she's going to look a weight size bigger than Shakirova when they get in there. And yeah, Shakirova clearly likes her overhand. I hope she doesn't turn into another wrestler who doesn't realize that the threat of the takedown was what was setting the overhand up. But I don't think she's going to have much for Murphy. I could see her, maybe getting her down in the early going. She has a fast shot. She chains her takedowns in a way that not a lot of women do, and that obviously speaks to her background as a freestyle wrestler. But the women that have gotten Lauren Murphy down when they want, we're talking about Sajara Eubanks, Liz Carmouche, and Sarah McMahon. Just three of the best offensive wrestlers and three of just the physically strongest women in those divisions. I don't think Shakirova is that. I think Murphy's going to win this one, either sweeping all three rounds or at least the second and the third. Pretty straightforward fashion. Next up at UFC 254 is a meeting between debuting middleweights Phil Hawes and Jacob Malkoun. Hawes, the 31-year-old from New Jersey by way of Sanford, Florida, is 8-2 in his UFC career. He's had several attempts to make it to the UFC. He's appeared twice on Dana White's Contender Series, as well as trying out for a season of The Ultimate Fighter. He finally punched his ticket to the Octagon just about 6 weeks ago on week 6 of the Contender Series 2020, putting out the lights of Kajimurat Bestayev in just 1 minute and 18 seconds. In his 10-fight career, Hawes has never seen the final or never heard the final bell. He'll be taking on Jacob Malkoun. The 25-year-old from Sydney is the other middleweight from PMA Super Martial Arts on the card tonight, notable as a primary training partner of former middleweight champ Robert Whittaker. He is 4-0 in a professional career that stretches back nearly 4 years, fighting about once a year in basically a grand tour of all of the Oceanic region's top promotions, Eternal MMA, Hex Fight Series, and so forth. Hawes is the minus 235 favorite. Malkoun available as high as plus 225. Who have you got in this matchup of men making their Octagon debut? Keith Schillen.
So I'll talk about Hawes. Hawes is a guy I've done a lot of film study for. He's been on the Contender Series. I do the Contender Series previews. I try to find as much film I have. There is a lot of film on Hawes because this is a guy that And one time when he was training with Jack Swink was getting compared to John Jones, the next John Jones. People saying the more explosive John Jones. I think he also trained with Tiger Schulman for a while. Now he's with Sanford MMA, so he's been with the big teams. And we've seen moments where he looked absolutely sensational. He's an extremely explosive athlete, extremely aggressive, does well to bounce his head off the center line. Good hand speed, works behind a jab, powerful leg kicks. But he also had moments of where he seemed disinterested, lost concentration, and his chin has been just checked. You think about the time he was like sent to another dimension by the high kick from Julian Marquez. But he's not just a striker. He's probably even better on the ground. He's a good, maybe a great wrestler. He's a junior college national champion. Very fast entries, gets on the hips. He'll slam opponent. What I love is that you sprawl out on him and he'll just through your sprawl, which is just shows he kind of had that, like, I can't believe I'm bringing it up twice now, but that Josh Koscheck thing where Josh Koscheck would just drive right through it. George St. Pierre is another guy, like, you could sprawl on him, and he different than Khabib. Khabib is a chain wrestler. Khabib works the angles. St. Pierre would drive right through it. Koscheck would drive right through it. Mark Kerr would drive right through it. That's something you get with Hawes. Good top control. Sneaky back takes. Another thing that's concerning about him is he doesn't conserve his energy, and also I think a lot of that has to do with just his build. Like, he is got muscle on top of muscle on top of muscle. I mean, he's a scary looking dude. Move on to Malkoun. I'm not going to pretend like I am some expert on the Oceanic fight scene, that I know a lot about this guy. He only has 4 pro fights. I was only able to find 2 of them. I did find a lot of BJJ competitions. He has competed in some pretty good ones, like a regional ADC tournament. So that's good. So I'm assuming he's probably pretty good on the ground. From what I did see in his 2 fights, decent hand speed, decent pop. Nothing that kind of really jumps out to you, though. I do like that he attacks with combos, though he does kind of charge. Always, he kind of like blitzes and always blitzes on a straight line. And it almost seems like a guy that, like, okay, I want to do this combination now, and then just charges and throws that. And then, like, okay, now I'm going to do this. And he's always like thinking, which sounds like thinking would be a good thing when it should just be natural, like thinking about your combination. You're not thinking about what's going back at you. Overhand right, pretty good. He's a little soft in the belly, like he's a little chubby, like not the complete opposite of Hawes, where Hawes is intimidating. This guy doesn't really look like a fighter. A guy who, you figure he has got good BJJ, but his wrestling looks, from what I've seen, it looks ugly. Like shoots from too far away, no setups. He was been taken down when he got on top. Pretty good ground and pound. I like that he looked to advance to better positions. I didn't see any submissions, but like I said, I'm assuming so. I don't have the most confident pick because there's not a lot to see about Malkoun, but from what I have seen, this looks like a mismatch. This looks like Hawes is going to have, he's a way better athlete, way faster. Just strictly off what I've seen, I think Hawes puts him out early. So I'll take Hawes. I say he blasts him, first round knockout. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. I'm just right on board with you. I will not pretend to be an expert on Jacob Malkoun. In fact, I would guess that you and I probably found the same 2 fights, probably the Eternal MMA and the Hex Fight Series fights for him. Hawes is not a perfect fighter. He's got a lot of holes that he may or may not ever fix. We don't know. But Malkoun seems built for him to run through. And maybe literally. You talked about that nuance of Hawes' takedown game. Another thing about him is that I'm not saying he is Cain Velasquez, but in a way reminiscent of Cain Velasquez, he takes people down hard and either lands in advantageous positions or like kind of shakes them up to the point where he's able to move to mount or side control pretty quickly or pretty instantly. I see him doing that to Malkoun, just, maybe shooting a double or shooting a single and turning the corner, slamming him down and just pounding him. I have my first round knockout as well.
Yeah, I'm going to just jump back in here real quick. We were talking about the 2 fights. I'll tell you exactly the 2 fights I saw. The one was Ryan Hector, which was the Hex Fight Series, as you said, and the other one was Sebastian Temesi, which I think you said also. Yep. His last fight was against the Sebastian Temesi. The guy's 3-1. What I'll say about his performance, it was a unanimous decision. He clearly won it. It was no controversy, anything like that. But it wasn't a performance that you think, oh, young fighter who's 4-0 should automatically go right into the UFC. Like, I don't know if it was even a performance that put you on the Contender Series. I think this has a lot more to do, and I think you'd probably agree with me, is who his training partner is, who has some clout, Robert Whittaker. Yep. I think this getting the UFC is more with who you know than based on his performance. But I could be wrong, so.
Hey, we'll be here to take our whipping over it if it turns out we're both dead wrong about this one. Third fight from the top of the UFC 254 main card is another heavyweight scrap. This one features Alexander Volkov and Walt Harris. Volkov, despite being just 31 years old, will be a 40-fight veteran one way or the other by the end of the evening on Saturday. He is 5-2 in the UFC, but has already been an M1 Global and a Bellator heavyweight champ. He is alternated wins and losses in his last 4. He was ground out by Curtis Blades back in June in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 11. Before that, he outclassed Greg Hardy pretty thoroughly on the feet last November. He was having a great night against Derek Lewis until he ended up on the end of some serious thunder with just 10 or 15 seconds left in that fight. And then he defeated Fabricio Verdum with a rear hand shovel uppercut from hell back at UFC Fight Night Verdum versus Volkov in March of 2018. He'll be taking on Walt the Big Ticket Harris, the 37-year-old Alabama native. is 13-8 with 1 no contest in his professional mixed martial arts career, 6-7 with 1 no contest inside the octagon. He lost in May to Alistair Overeem in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 8, getting punched out in the second round after having a fantastic first round in which he had Overeem in quite a bit of trouble. That snapped a 2-fight winning streak for him in which he had punched out Alexei Oleinik and Sergey Spivak in about a combined 60 seconds of octagon time. As of right now, Volkov is the moderate favorite. He is sitting around -170, Harris around +160 on the comeback. Keith Schillen, who do you have in this high stakes heavyweight matchup?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting stylistic matchup. I think the big thing that stands out to me is just polar opposites in their approach to the game. I'll start with Walt Harris, southpaw, crazy athleticism, but kind of raw. He knows that he's raw. Hits super hard. He kind of wings that overhand left. If he hits you with it, there's a good chance you're going to go out. I mean, unless you're Alistair Overeem, who was able to survive. He gets on top, brutal ground and pound. Though he's a terrible wrestler, as we saw, Alistair Overeem was able to take him down, hold him down, beat him up. Gas tank is a big issue because he throws everything with power, trying to end it quick. Move over to Volkov, very completely different sense. He's a technically sound, very disciplined striker, stays very loyal to a game plan. Like, he knows what he needs to do to win a fight, and he will stay to it. Keeps his range well, uses the jabs, throws straight punches right down the pipe, kicks to the body, teep kicks, step-in knees, use movement, all the things to keep his range. We saw that especially in the Greg Hardy fight, where he just, he could have put the gas pedal on it and maybe took out Greg Hardy, but why risk it when everything's working? He conserves his energy because he just touches. He doesn't try to end you with one punch, and that's because he understands that he's not Walt Harris. He's not going to put your lights out with one punch. Decent chin. Obviously, the Derek Lewis checked it, but for the most part, he's been hit with some big guys and hits it well. And I think that's just a lot of that has to do with his height, like trying to get in and get connected well. Though it didn't look like it against Curtis Blades, he usually has a pretty good takedown defense. I just think Curtis Blades is such a great wrestler. You can take him down. So as prediction, I think because they're polar opposites, I think it's a tough one to pick because, I mean, Walt Harris hits so hard but not technical, doesn't conserve his energy, and Volkov is technical but has no power. So it's either it's a very, and I say this time, I hate lazy breakdowns, and I feel like I'm being lazy in this one. It's either Harris early or Volkov late. I think Volkov, pre-tape study, I wrote down Walt Harris. I just felt like that, I was going that, but then I switched over to Volkov. I think he can avoid, an early surge from Harris, make him outwork, pick him out of range, and I think I'm gonna say he finished. No, I'm gonna say unanimous decision for Volkov. I think he takes the second, third round after losing the first.
Outstanding. I have a lot of the same impressions of this fight that it sounds like you do. The thing I'll give Harris is his striking technique. I mean, it isn't beautiful. It isn't textbook, but it works. I mean, obviously he pummeled Overeem in the first round of their fight. It was later reversed to a no contest because he had a PED violation, but he took a unanimous decision over Andrei Arlovsky in what was essentially mostly a kickboxing match. And Arlovsky, even at this stage in his career, is a pretty technically sound striker. He's a guy who generally knows, how to take care of himself. I know that Volkov can be knocked out, but I don't think many people, even people who are thought of as big punchers, can duplicate what Derek Lewis did there. Derek Lewis has a level of power that even a lot of other big hitters don't quite have. I mean, you look at the replays of that, and the way Volkov's head swiveled on his spine, Like, I would have been shocked if he wasn't knocked out. I mean, there's just some physics going on there that, like, I think his brain probably kept spinning for like a few seconds after his head snapped back the other way. I think this is going to look like the Volkov versus Lewis fight without that last 15 seconds, where, Volkov was just on his way to kind of winning a comfortable decision, not sensational to watch, but, really, really no question. And the other big difference is that Lewis, even though, I mean, he's breathing hard and he's got his mouth wide open and he's throwing 8 strikes around by the second round, he keeps throwing effective offense later into fights. I believe he's the UFC heavyweight division's all-time leader in KOs and TKOs now. But even before he was the leader in KOs and TKOs in the third round or later. And that is something that he has in his back pocket that Harris doesn't. So Harris could get him early, but I'm betting on Volkov to hang on and get a unanimous decision as well. And with that, we arrive at our co-main event. In the middleweight division, former champion Robert Whittaker takes on the red-hot Jared Cannonier. Whittaker is 21-5 in his mixed martial arts career. He is 12-3 in the UFC. Notably, he's 9-1 since moving up to middleweight, with the only loss coming to current champ Israel Adesanya. Cannonier, the Killa Gorilla, is 13-4. He is 5-4. Damn it. He is 6-4 in the UFC, although that's somewhat deceptive as it reflects his journey across 3 weight classes as he entered the UFC as a heavyweight, dropped to 205 pounds, and most recently has dropped all the way to middleweight, where he is on a 3-fight win streak, beating Jack Hermanson, Anderson Silva, and David Branch. This one is close on the odds as well. Cannonier, just slight favorite, sitting around -110. Whittaker close to even money, but the best you can find as of Wednesday night is -102. I'll go first on this one, and I'll say that, frankly, this fight terrifies me. Kind of like you talked about Lauren Murphy, I have a bit of a soft spot in my heart for Robert Whittaker. Just there's something about him that makes me want to see the guy do well. I hope and I flatter myself that it doesn't affect my analysis of his fights, but, certainly it was a good feeling to see him after the Till fight, leading up to the Till fight and after the Till fight, just apparently having found a little bit better work-life balance, seemed happier in the lead up to the fight, and then obviously afterwards having, won and had a really good performance. And I think on paper, he should be able to handle Cannonier, but Cannonier is just so dangerous. It is crazy to me to think that Jared Cannonier entered the UFC and fought Sean Jordan in his first fight. I mean, this guy used to be a 235-pound heavyweight, didn't look especially undersized at heavyweight, then, has kind of just melted away before our very eyes. And now at middleweight, he's just incredibly dangerous. He is a very explosive guy. And I know that, it's a cliche in mixed martial arts, to talk about African-American fighters as being athletic and explosive. They aren't all athletic and explosive. Jared Cannonier is athletic and explosive. And he's incredibly strong. He's just a Hulk in the clinch. He has excellent wrestling when he wants to. And I can just see, very easily that as tough as Whittaker is and as good as his chin is, Cannonier would not have to land, with very much to really have the whole fight turn on a dime. Nonetheless, I am going to go with Whittaker, and I'm going to go with Whittaker by decision. I think he'll win most of the rounds. I think he'll probably, win everything from about the second round on, and I'll be on the edge of my seat the whole time. Tell me I'm wrong, Keith Schillen.
Man, it's a really, really fun matchup. It's one that I'm excited about. I definitely don't think it's getting the media attention it should, and I understand that because we have such an incredible main event that's why it's getting overshadowed. Uh, I love that you mentioned Cannonier used to be a heavyweight, now fighting middleweight. Whittaker used to be a welterweight, fighting middleweight. Like go back to 2014 when Whittaker was a welterweight and Cannonier was a heavyweight. Imagine saying that these two guys are going to fight each other one day. Like
Hmm.
that'd be like saying like Colby Covington is going to fight Alistair Overeem one day. Like it's not going
Yep.
to happen. I'll start with Whittaker. Former champion. He's only 29 years old, and this is like the third time I've said this now, but he's got so many miles, on the tires. Besides the incredible wars he's been in, the two fights with Romero, the Adesanya. I mean, Till was, rocking sock him at times. He's also had, besides all that, he's had slew of injuries. He had to pull out with injuries. He had that weird thing that happened with when he was going to fight Adesanya the week of the fight.
The
Sorry,
hernia.
no.
Yeah.
Was that Adesanya? I think actually it was Gastelum. I'm sorry. I think it was Gastelum they had to pull out of that one. He's broke his hand many times. He had to deal with broken hand issues. So he's had like a string of bad luck. But let's talk about his skill set. When I think of Rob Whittaker, I think of the jab. Everything comes behind the jab, and that's why he's been so successful. He does it. I love that he does this like double pump jab that he uses. He almost like it makes it look like he's fainting, but he's actually like almost loading up. So he has like a power stinging jab. He stands his ground with his jab. He does keep his hands low because he throws some kind of the kind of like that up jab that like Floyd Mayweather does. Um, he relies solely on head movement, which has backfired on the times, but also sets up his best strike, which is his left hook. It also sets up his like he does this lunging high kick. Like he lunges to the left side to throw the right side high kick, which works well with him. Constantly relying on head movement. He will just wing his right hand, trying to knock you out with that. He also uses it. He kind of like intimidates his opponents when they charge at him. He'll wing that right hand. Good at catching his opponent's attacks, like catching the timing on his opponent's attacks, like kind of like responding. He did that well with Romero. He loves that like side kick to the obliques to kind of keep distance. He can be heavy on his front foot, which gives him power, but also leaves him open to leg kicks. Remember, he got injured. I think it was the first Romero fight. He hurt his leg from a leg kick. Good elbows in the clinch. I don't think he gets enough credit for how like just gritty he is. Like he gets credit for toughness, but I mean like nasty. Like he's a guy who can he'll cut you up with an elbow and stuff like that. He loses some power because he lunges a lot. Like he something that Justin Gaethje has been done in the past. He also and I know I'm talking a lot about Robert Whittaker, and I promise I'll try to speed it up a little bit. The biggest flaw is he does that, and this is a flaw of so many. It's almost like it's really a young fighter's mentality. When he gets hit with something big, he doesn't let himself recover. Instead, he's trying to even up the score, where he's trying to land back, and that has got him rocked before. That's what got him in trouble against Adesanya and put out. I mean, Romero. There was times when especially in the second fight, like Romero rocked him in the fourth round, and he should be circling away, he should be jabbing, he should be keep kicking, and instead he's charging forward trying to land his own shot. Darren Till hurt him, not necessarily because of that, but I'm saying like he's been rocked so many times. But he has absolute insane heart, insane toughness, failures to a fault. He doesn't use his offensive wrestling enough, but we did actually see him use it against Till, which is a good sign, showing maturity. Insanely good takedown defense. I mean, any questions about his takedown defense? Just look at the first fight against Yoel Romero. That'll tell you what you need to do. When he is at top control, good ground and pound. Now I'll flip that to Jared Cannonier. Now Jared Cannonier is 36, and he's like the complete opposite. He's 36, but he doesn't have nearly as much tread on his tire. He's not a round winner. I think you were talking about you mentioned someone earlier, and I forgot who it was. I apologize. But you talked about the person not being a round winner versus not being around. That's what guy that necessarily wins round, but he puts you out if you make a mistake, because he's not a technically sound. Like there's nothing really jumps out there like this is what he does good, from a technical sense. He just makes it up because he hits so freaking hard. He's so freaking strong. Like he's a middleweight, but it seems like he still has that heavyweight power. He'll stalk his opponents. He's patient and won't get wild. He's comfortable, like looking for the shot instead of forcing things like Robert Whittaker does. I would say the most technical aspect of his game is probably his kicks, which he doesn't use enough to almost to a fault, like criminally to a fault. He also doesn't check kicks because he's sitting on his punches so well. You go back to like the David Branch, how much power he was able to generate by he's just sitting on his punches. He has improved his takedown defense. We saw it in the Jack Hermanson fight, but it's still a weakness. Like that's been a weakness in his game, and I'm not comfortable enough to say like I think he has good takedown defense yet. Though when he was taken down, he did scramble back to his feet. And going back to Herman's fight, if he's on top, he went from like looked like it wasn't like being effective ground and pound to suddenly like, oh my god, they got to stop the fight. Like that's how hard he's hitting. This to me, I thought you had an excellent breakdown, and I know I'm talking way too long, but this comes down to me whether Whittaker can recover, because I think he's going to get hurt. I think Cannonier is going to hurt him. I'm really torn. I mean, the odds reflect this. I think Cannonier is like a -110 favorite to Whittaker's. I think you said what -105,
102. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so technically Cannonier is the favorite, but by the time people listen to this, it could be flipped. This is probably my least confident pick of the entire card because we've seen Whittaker get hurt. But when I take down the skill sets, I mean, you could just tell when I was breaking down the skill set whose actual skills I respect more, and that's Whittaker. Everything else that comes with it is what worries me about Whittaker. Like, does he still have that hand speed? Can he still recover? Because of all the things we've seen him go through. You mentioned, he talked about he didn't sign a fight bout because he needed some time off and family. Like all that is worrisome. While Cannonier is talking about he wants to win the title and defend it 16 times because why 16? Because he's a kind of strange character. But that purist in me still has to take the technical skills. So I'm going to take Whittaker. This is actually my first upset of the evening, in which I'm very upset that I have not taken more. And I usually pride myself on willing to take upsets. So I'm glad I at least got one in at least. But wait, maybe I got one in the main event. But I will take Whittaker. I think it's going to be a 29-28 victory. I think this is going to be one of these classic Robert Whittaker wars where he's bloodied up, had to recover. I think fans might be split on this one, but I'll take Robert Whittaker by decision.
That brings us to the main event of UFC 254, the lightweight title unification bout between Khabib Nurmagomedov and interim champ Justin Gaethje. As we stated at the top, Nurmagomedov, the 32-year-old from Dagestan, is 28-0 in his mixed martial arts career. The last dozen of those fights having taken place in the UFC octagon. For posterity's sake, those victims are Belarus, T-Bow in the close and controversial decision, then Thiago Tavares, Abel Trujillo, Pat Healy, Rafael Dos Anjos, Daryl Horcher, Michael Johnson, Edson Barboza, Al Iaquinta to win the vacant title at UFC 223, Conor McGregor, and last September, most recently, Dustin Poirier. Gaethje, the former World Series of Fighting champ, is 22-2 in his mixed martial arts career. He arrived in the UFC in 2017 as the undefeated World Series of Fighting champ, has gone 5-2 in the octagon. He very famously said, the O has got to go. It did, in fact, go. as after losing his debut or after winning his debut over Michael Johnson, he lost back-to-back fights to Eddie Alvarez and to Poirier, and has gone on to win 4 straight by KO or TKO since then. Those are over James Vick, Edson Barboza, Donald Cerrone, and most recently, Tony Ferguson this May. Nurmagomedov is a minus 290 favorite as of the time of this recording. Gaethje available as an underdog as high as plus 280. I'll go ahead and go first on this one. For a while, probably from the time he beat Vick and Barboza, I thought Gaethje, if he ever got there, would probably be the biggest threat to Nurmagomedov of anybody kind of currently in the lightweight division. He had a lot of the moving parts that people bring up when they say, well, somebody could beat Khabib if only. If only they invested in leg kicks and they were a good leg kicker and could, get on that heavy front leg of his. But if they were also good enough to avoid being taken down. And if they had enough punching power to kind of stop him in his tracks and make him think twice. Gaethje has all those moving parts. He's one of the most devastating leg kickers in the sport right now. He has fantastic takedown defense, and certainly he is a very, very hard puncher. Having said that, I don't think he's going to be able to get it going against Nurmagomedov. I mean, it doesn't feel real daring of me. I don't feel as though I'm stepping out on a limb here to pick the 3-1 favorite or to pick a guy who's 28-0 to win his 29th fight. But even knowing that Gaethje is the best that, or I believe that he's the best that Nurmagomedov has faced, or at least the best suited to beat him, because Poirier and McGregor are both fantastic fighters, but they did not match up well stylistically with Nurmagomedov, which is how you had Poirier, a proud champ in his own right and a pound for pound level talent just in his corner between rounds saying, I can't get this guy off me. It was one of just the most crushing things I'd ever heard off of a stool between rounds in such a high stakes fight. Gaethje has it all there to do on paper. And I just don't think it's going to make a difference. I could see Gaethje winning the first round. He is an absolutely outstanding first round fighter. And Khabib is going to be very aware of the threats he brings to the table. Khabib is not a slow starter, but he doesn't really start rolling downhill typically until he started to wear down the other guy. I could see Gaethje winning the first round and then losing all the rounds from there until it's over, either from the final horn or from a stoppage in the 4th or 5th round. But for the record, I think Khabib will be able to get Gaethje down onto the floor. I think he will be able to just kind of pin him and hold him helpless there against the fence with the double leg ride and possibly what the UFC booth now likes to call the Dagestani handcuff. And I think because of that, Gaethje, even though he's a fantastically conditioned athlete, will be the more tired guy in the later rounds, and then he will go the way of all the other challengers. Give me Nurmagomedov by submission or TKO on the ground in the championship rounds. Keith Schillen, bring us on home.
Yeah, I'll start with Khabib. He's the champion. I'll start with him. This guy just physically breaks people with his insane pressure, and I think he is so extremely intelligent in the for. The one that jumps out to me is that makes the most sense in this fight is the Barboza fight. He crowded the kicker of Barboza. Barboza wasn't even able to get his kicks off. At one point, he did a flying knee just to close the distance to get past his kicking range, which this could be an issue for Justin Gaethje. Now, when you throw a flying knee, Justin Gaethje has the hand power to separate your unconscious, which that's not really Barboza's game. But I just want to point out like things that Khabib did to get by the kicks. He's absolutely fearless. As we talked about, Rob Whittaker, he's even worse. He'll go right through the fire to get to what he knows is his bread and butter. I'll talk about his striking for a second, and it won't be long because I don't expect to see him striking much. He's surprisingly hard to hit with any hooks coming from the left side, which is one of Justin Gaethje's best punch. Is because while he has many flaws defensively, he keeps his right hand glued to his chin on the right side. He does lack lateral head movement. His head straight back, keeps his chin high in the air, as we saw, especially in the extended periods in the Al Iaquinta fight. He keeps his left hand low, which would be an issue if you're throwing straight rights down the pipe, which is something Justin Gaethje is very. I mean, Justin Gaethje is very good at throwing a lot of punches, but straight right is one of his best punches. Offensively, Khabib's jab is not that bad. I'm going to ignore that kind of looping overhand right that he caught Connor. I think that was just, as we talked about earlier, guys who land their overhand right because of their wrestling. I think that was just kind of fluky. But the jab wasn't. Like his jab to Iaquinta, he was popping it for like 2 rounds. But he throws punches because he's so intelligent. He throws punches for 2 reasons. Either to get you to back up, which will get you close to the cage, which will increase his chances, which is already extremely high to get a takedown, increases it even more, or I shouldn't say, or I say, and I should say, and he does it to get you to force you to raise your hands, which also allows him to shoot underneath. So jab, get your hands up. Now you can shoot underneath while getting you to back up to the cage. So it works out even better for his wrestling. As far as when he gets to the ground, he is the greatest ground fighter in the history of MMA. He's extremely strong. He gets to that clinch. His clinch game is just on point. He has those trips. He's a master of just working a little angle. He chain wrestles. Yeah, we talked about Phil Hawes exploding. That's not what Khabib is. Khabib chain wrestles. So when you think you stopped the initial shot, you had that wasn't he wasn't trying to take you down with shot A. He's trying to take you down with the turn of the corner on F. Like you stop A, you stop B, you stop C, you stop D, and all he's doing is taking an inch of time. I go back to the Conor McGregor fight in the very beginning of the first round. I think it was Dominic Cruz and Joe Rogan, and they were basically saying like, "Oh, Conor stuffed this takedown." I'm like, "That's how do you not see? That's not his game." He kept circling with us. He'd circle with the on an ankle, he'd circle, then he'd come back the other way, and all he was doing was getting Conor to overextend a hip, get on the right angle, and then he switched to the double, and it was absolute brilliant. Like that was never the single, was never the game. It was the single was closest to eventually switch to the double to control the hips, to take him to the ground. That's just what he does. I mean, he's an absolute master of it. Insane ground control. Like there's no debate. He takes you down. Chances are the round is probably over if he takes you down. He just needs a single limb, an ankle. He shot a takedown early in the Al Iaquinta fight where he just had the ankle in the grip strength to get it, to take a whole takedown with just the ankle. Incredible. He's completely changed the way people look at fighting on the ground. He does that. He does that thing. Well, we really need to give it a nickname where he hooks the legs. Like he works. He puts his head control, kind of gets your head up, and he slides the legs, hooks them, basically. Like the legs are hog tied together. It's incredible. He uses his upper body, lower body so well, and that's something that Dominic Cruz mentioned in his last fight against Dustin Poirier, and that really jumped out to me once I watched that fight for the rest of any film study I did at Khabib. So shout out to Dominic Cruz, best ground and pound ever. He just brutalizes you, mauls you, all those great words we like to use for him. He is a submission threat. And he doesn't slow down when he's battering his foes. Moving to Justin Gaethje, what an incredible run Justin Gaethje is on, and specifically his performance against Tony Ferguson was like eye-opening. Guy, he has huge power, slides well into the pocket so he can unload power shots. His overhand right is absolutely deadly. If you don't believe me, ask James Vick. His left hook. So his left hook, he was destroying Tony Ferguson the entire 5 rounds with it. So if you can come both sides with devastating one. That makes him such a bigger threat because you have to be so careful which way your head's dipping, which way he's sending things up. He can knock you out with both hands. I don't think he gets enough credit for his dirty boxing. He loves to grab the back of the head, uppercut. He had a lot of success in he did it to Donald Cerrone, grab him with the left hand, uppercut with the right hand. Some of the best kicks, maybe the best leg kicks in the game. He's so heavy on his front leg that he doesn't really check kicks, but that won't be an issue against Khabib. I mean, Eddie Alvarez did well kicking out Justin legs, but Khabib just really doesn't throw kicks for the most part, especially not leg kicks. He's starting to control his power shots, which is helping him not gas out, and it's made him definitely more technically sound. And it was something that Trevor Whitman got caught saying to him, like, control, take back, don't throw 80%. And people have made that such a big narrative, and that's why he's been so good. But I think even more than taking some off is how he's made improves technically. It wasn't just not going into a draw to get into brawl. He's getting his positioning better, where his legs are following him, so he always has a base. So like especially in the Tony Ferguson one, that's when I jumped out. He was always in position to generate power with clean shots without looping, lunging stuff that he's done in the past. The Michael Johnson fight, the Eddie Alvarez fight. Defense is still an issue with Justin Gaethje. He's still he used more head movement, especially in the Tony Ferguson fight, but he's still back straight up, which would be a major issue. Like, no, don't do that against Khabib. He still drops his hands. He's been rocked in practically every single fight, including the Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson almost knocked him out in the second round. He is a former All-American wrestler, though he never used it. So what is my prediction? After all that breakdown, I think my prediction is actually pretty easy. It comes down to where the fight takes place. Khabib needs to be around the perimeter. What I mean by that is like that, between the cage and that black outline. Gaethje needs it to be in the center. He needs to hold his ground. He needs to not back up. He needs to, instead of sprawling back, he needs to hip forward. A lot of people know something Antonio McKee's talked about, like, you don't sprawl out, you actually have to hip over. I mean, see something you see in like a lot of NCAA wrestling, something that Gaethje's talked about with folk style wrestling. That said, I think Justin Gaethje needs to be perfect. And that's really weird for telling the person who can turn your lights out with one shot. You're going against Justin Gaethje, you kind of have to be perfect because he can put your lights out with one shot. But what I mean about Gaethje needs to be perfect, if he gets taken down clean where he's put to his back in one round, that can change the whole fight. Because when Khabib gets you there, he pummels you, and then as you were mentioning, that is the breaking point. That's where just the ball starts rolling. So he has to stuff every takedown, and I think people greatly exaggerate Justin Gaethje's wrestling, his credentials. Yeah, he was an All-American. He was an All-American 10 years ago. You know what? He wasn't first. He didn't win. He's not Ben Askren. He didn't win a multiple-time champion. He took 7th his senior year. He went into that tournament unranked. They had a nice little tournament. But, like, in the wrestling community, Justin Gaethje is not a legend. Like, most people don't really know who he is. He was never ranked in like the top 12 before. He was never ranked. And Khabib has faced other good wrestlers. Like Abel Trujillo, not a world beater, but he was a 4-time NAIA. Justin Gaethje is obviously a higher level, but he was a 4-time NAIA All-American. And Khabib set the all-time takedown record on him. So what it comes down to me is Gaethje, I really think he has like one punch knockout chance, and that's it. Like I expect he needs to land a shot, and he needs to knock Khabib out because I don't think he's going to be able to stop Khabib's takedowns. And I also think people exaggerated suddenly Justin Gaethje had this Chad Mendes type takedown defense. I don't know where that came from. Eddie Alvarez took down Justin Gaethje. Michael Johnson took down Justin Gaethje. He was taken down several times in the World Series of Fighting. Now, he is a much different fighter. Maybe he doesn't gas out. Maybe that helps. But until he shows that, I haven't seen this amazing wrestling out of Justin Gaethje, and I haven't seen Khabib lose. So I got I need both of them to show up. I don't think it's gonna happen. I'm taking Khabib. I'm taking 4th-round submission. And I always like to be bold in the main event. I say he locks in a rear naked choke, and I say Justin Gaethje is so insanely tough that he doesn't tap out and he goes to sleep. So I'll take Khabib by submission, putting Justin Gaethje to sleep.
And there you have it. Schillen and Duffy's picks for all 12 fights from UFC 254. Just a quick rundown of those picks. In the main event, Keith and Ben both have Khabib Nurmagomedov to unify the titles and win his 29th straight fight. Keith has him by a round 4 rear naked choke in which Justin Gaethje goes completely to sleep. My visualization is not quite as detailed as his, but I do have him by a stoppage of some kind on the ground in the 4th or 5th round. In the co-main event, we both have Robert Whittaker to win by decision over Jared Cannonier. We both like Alexander Volkov to defeat Walt Harris. We both have Keith Hawes via round 1 knockout. We both favor Lauren Murphy to win by decision over the debuting Liliya Shakirova. We both have Magomed Ankalaev over Jan Cutelaba. I have Ankalaev by 1st round knockout. Did you as well, Keith?
I did.
Okay. In the other heavyweight bout of the evening, we have some dissension in the ranks. Keith likes Stefan Struve to win by submission. Ben likes Tuivasa by 1st round knockout, but we both already know that Keith is wrong on that one. Stay locked for that one. We'll be talking about it on Sunday. Alex Oliveira, we both like him to spoil Shavkat Rakhmanov's octagon debut. Keith has him by decision. Ben has him by stoppage in the final round. We both like Un Jung to make it 5 straight losses for a presumably not smiling Sam Alvey by the end of the evening. Keith by round 1 knockout, Ben by round 2 knockout. We both like Casey Kenney to defeat Nathaniel Wood by decision in their bantamweight matchup. In the second fight of the night, we both favor Miranda Maverick over Liana Jojua. Keith has Maverick by a round 3 finish. Ben has Maverick by decision. And in the opening bout of the evening, once again, disagreement where Keith feels Alvarez will get a submission of some kind in the 3rd round. Ben thinks Yakovlev will hold on for the decision and hold on to his job. There you have it. All 12 picks for UFC 254. I've been Ben Duffy. You can find me on Twitter.
Ben, I got to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you. We have 2 more fights to pick.
Uh-oh.
You forgot
what did I miss?
1-word answer. Michael Chandler ends up in the main event against Khabib. Who wins?
Khabib.
All right. Same thing against Justin Gaethje, which would be an incredible fight. Who wins?
It would be an incredible fight, but I've got Gaethje.
Yeah, I agree. I got the same way. So neither one of us think Michael Chandler. If somehow he gets in.
If somehow he gets in, if somebody slips on a cord, if somebody slips on a pipe, if somebody blows weight.
I love that you're adding. I love that you're adding things that have actually. It sounds crazy. This actually have happened.
Oh yeah, I was just listing off things.
Kevin Randleman did slip on a pipe. Like this is great.
But yeah, I guess we got here without even mentioning that longtime Bellator lightweight champion Michael Chandler is signed to the UFC and on standby and will be weighing in as a backup for the main event.
Yeah, that would be the ultimate 2020 thing if he gets in the main event and somehow wins a title. That would be.
Oh man.
And Scott Coker would go on Twitter having a just shitstorm on UFC.
I think he'd probably be having a pretty good time.
Yeah, no, I know. That's what I mean. Like he would have a very good time, but
yes,
neither one of us that's going to happen.
Nah, I don't think so. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt
that's
your
good.
closing.
As stated before, I'm at Benjamin Duffy on Twitter. I am a contributor. Well, I'm an editor at SureDog.com, where you can find my work in the features drop-down menu under my name. Keith Schillen, tell the folks how, where, and why to find you.
Why? I don't know why, but you can find me on Twitter at Keith Schillen MMA. My last name is spelled Shillan, so it's at Keith Schillen MMA on Twitter. And then all my work is here on Loudmouth MMA and SureDog.com.
And I will give you the why, because he got all of these fights dead right except for the Struve versus Tuivasa fight. Thank you for listening.
I think I'd be more like I'd be less depressed if I went like 6-6 than if I went 11-1 and got that one wrong.
Well, make sure to catch our recap show this Sunday and the day after every major card. Thanks and good night.